I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Where are our prophets now? Where are those messengers God chooses to communicate divine revelation through? In the past, the Creator sent prophets like Abraham, Siddhartha, Jesus, Muhammad, and many more. Maybe our higher power has switched tactics since we reinterpret God's words as soon as the Creator's prophets leave us. Could it be that Spirit talks to each one of us individually and we haven't learned to listen? On Words of the Prophets, our modern prophets show us how to find the internal prophet that is the I Am, and we discuss the application of spiritual principles in all aspects of our lives.
Love and light, everybody. I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Today, my guest is Shubhraji, who is the founder and head of Nama, which means to prostrate or surrender to the divine, Vedanta Center for Spiritual Unfoldment in Woodstock, New York. She is also a teacher of meditation and scriptural texts. And we're going to not only talk about her, but we're going to talk about her teacher, her master, who is Swami Chinmayananda, who is the founder, well, not the founder, but he guided her to do this work. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Today's prophetic topic is Peace Immediately Follows Renunciation. And this is coming from the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 12, as translated by Swami Chinmayananda. The section that contains our topic reads as follows. Knowledge is indeed better than practice. Meditation is better than knowledge. Renunciation of the fruits of action is better than meditation. Peace immediately follows renunciation. You know, and I wanted to start with a little bit of your story, but I'm going to switch tactics if you could come with me on that. Let's talk about this quotation. This is a great quotation. And knowledge is better than practice. What does that mean?
Actually, this is a very difficult verse to translate when you try and start from the top of the verse. So we generally start translating it backwards.
Okay, go for it.
Peace is what we want. And so peace comes after renunciation. Renouncing what? Renouncing the ego.
The ego, the connection to the attachments.
Exactly.
Okay.
So basically what this verse is saying, that the highest caliber of person can meditate and reach the deepest connection with the divine. Those who have more or less a pure heart, 20% problems, but 80% purity. And so meditation is the highest. And then if you cannot meditate, then practice. Practice is abhyas. Practice means try and let your mind be centered when you work. Let your mind not wander. And when it wanders, bring it back to the object of your work and to your connection with God.
So practice is about being present in the very moment.
Practice is about being present and keeping your mind and heart alert while working in the world, but not just taking the world to be the world, but understanding that behind all these names and forms, there is a one divine energy. And in that way, we extend from our being and become selfless. And the more we become selfless, we have peace of mind and heart.
So the practice is about seeing not only that we are divine, but the divine in everything and staying connected to that.
Staying connected, and as a result of staying connected and remembrance, my actions, my mind is not wandering. And so whatever given piece of work I'm doing, I'm serving the community, I'm serving my family, I'm serving my teacher, I'm serving the world at large. I'm always in that moment, I'm centered in that. And when my mind goes away, derails because of its old habits, then I bring it back. That is practice. When in yoga, my mind wavers, I bring it back. So the practice, when I'm driving a car, it's like driving the car. I've learned how to drive. And then suddenly I get distracted, so the car starts going, bring it back.
Okay.
So through that practice, when it is brought back. But if you can't even do that, then the Krishna, the teacher, says, if you can't do that, then just do actions for my sake, and that will make your mind quiet and peaceful. And if you can't even do that, then give up the anxiety for the fruits of the actions. Don't project into the future.
Stay present.
Stay present. And when you do that, and so this verse is the culmination of this essence, this idea. And so that's why it says knowledge is better than practice. If you could repeat it, because I don't have it.
Knowledge is indeed better than practice. Meditation is better than knowledge. Renunciation of the fruits of actions is better than meditation. Peace immediately follows renunciation. So as long as I'm detached, I'm in peace.
Yes.
I don't care about the outcome. I know it's in divine hands and happening the way divinely it should.
Right. The idea is when the mind is peaceful, then alone in that peaceful mind can knowledge take place, and that can lead you to a deeper place of meditation. That's the idea.
Okay. I just want to, because we jumped right into this, and we're going to go back and just get a quick story. I mean, those of you who've been watching the show for a while, Shubhraji has been with me about 3 months ago. I think you were here in town,
Yes.
and we did a show then. And we're getting a little more specific today. I'm doing a series of shows without calling them a series, but we're trying to give you, the viewing audience, a set of tools. There's lots of tools. Every religion provides us with tools. Every spiritual practice provides us with tools, how to live a life that is spiritual, that is, bringing us closer to our connection to the divine, so to speak. And in Vedanta, it's the Bhagavad-Gita. There's no, in my opinion, nothing finer, nothing better. It's, it is one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful book ever written. So with that, tell us a little bit quickly about yourself. We're going to assume everybody, but maybe 3 people have seen you before, so we'll just remind them who you are.
Well, right now, who I am is I'm teaching this Vedanta philosophy, which I got to hear directly from my teacher, my master, His Holiness Swami Chinmayananda, who's no more in his body. He left his body about 16 years back. And so as a young teenager, I was introduced to this philosophy. And it took me a while to understand, but then I realized it's a very practical, universal philosophy. Vedanta is about our life. How can we live in a way that is practical and in a way that brings us to the source of our happiness within, which is peace and joy, which we don't know. Right now it's covered up by all our stuff, by all our imagination, and by the wrong interpretation of ourselves and the world. And that leads to veiling of the true self, which we are told in our true nature we are perfect, we are divine, we are free, we are joy itself. But we can't ever feel it because we get so attached to our thoughts. So Vedanta is a universal philosophy which focuses on the one underlying principle of life. It is the basis of all yogas, of all philosophy in the East, and it shows us that there is this one reality which is appearing in so many different forms, and that in essence we are all connected, we are all one.
Mm-hmm. So let's get right into the Bhagavad-Gita. That translates into divine song. Can you tell us a little bit about the Bhagavad-Gita, where it comes from and what it's based upon?
Yeah, the Vedantic philosophy really is in revelation, just like any other scripture, and that mystical portion is called the Upanishads. The Upanishads really are meant for a highly evolved student, and they talk about the self, they talk about the divine, the one absolute reality. And they are addressed to a student who is very purified within and can grasp. However, these philosophical truths are now brought down in the Bhagavad-Gita, which is man-written. It is not a direct revelation, but a great master called Ved Vyas wrote this and set it against the battlefield. And so it is a dialogue between Lord Krishna, who is the Lord incarnate, and Arjuna, skeptical young guy, who is the prince and who is the commander-in-chief of his forces, And it is set in an historical context. It is supposedly written about 1500 BC. And so it is considered part of the Vedanta philosophy because it takes the essence of the philosophical truths and puts it in a very practical way.
I've listened to something you had recorded a while back, a lecture on this, and you called it a practical handbook for life. And I remember you said it covers every possible emotion,
yes,
and how do we deal with them. And that was the intent. That's what makes this, and if this is a segment of a much larger book, it's what makes this so wonderful. It's everything is boiled down into these, I don't know, 100 some odd pages or something.
Yeah, it's 700 verses, and it comes in an epic called the Mahabharata. And it is really Vyasa, the great storyteller, who was a spiritual master, wanted to bring this teaching to the masses. And so he sets it in the background, and it's probably historically a fact, that there is two families who live together, and the uncle who is blind is the king. And the blind man's son has ambition, personal ambition, greed and fame. And technically, the blind man's brother's children, they have to get their kingdom, and the eldest of those is to become the king. But because of greed, the son of the blind man wants the kingdom, and so he tricks them into a game, into a gambling game, and banishes them from the kingdom. And when they return after 13 years of exile, he refuses to give them back. So it's set with the tone of injustice and how good over evil, the victory of good over evil intent, and how to live life. Because when a problem comes, the solution is not outside. And this is what the author Vyasa wants to show us. That in life, whenever there is a problem, the solution is actually within us, but it's in the way we see it.
Or the way we see ourselves.
The way we see ourselves and the way we respond to a situation. That in responding to the situation, it is the integrity of the inner being that is going to be able to solve the problem.
So my understanding is that this conversation between Arjuna and Krishna takes place in this in-between area on the night before the battle. They're going to fight in the morning.
Actually, it's on the battlefield where the fight is going to happen at that moment, which represents symbolically the inner conflict between right and wrong, good and bad. So it is right at that time that Arjuna, who is a prince, and he has trained all his life. The point being, we are very competent. We have all the knowledge, we are proficient. But sometimes when we meet life head on, we get shattered. And that's what happens to Arjuna the prince. He has a nervous breakdown. His personality gets fractured because he views the situation incorrectly. And so the whole idea is that when we see something, when we project and we interpret things in an incorrect way, fear comes, all these emotions come, which are not the reality of that moment. And in that moment, our personality gets disintegrated. So Krishna, who is his mentor, who is his friend, and related to his family, he is not in the status of a divine God at that moment. Arjuna doesn't know him. He knows him as his friend, as his mentor. Krishna then starts his treatment of removing this delusion of Arjuna, delusion not in a medical sense, but this incorrect thinking by his words. And that is the whole dialogue between the two. And that is the Bhagavad-Gita, the divine song.
So the dialogue is about basically the renunciation, going back to our topic of the fruits of action. So Arjuna is caught up in what may or may not happen in this battle, and it's getting in the way of him just doing what he's supposed to do.
Yes. Arjuna is a warrior, and as a warrior he's supposed to defend his people, his kingdom, and he has to stand up for what is the truth. But at that moment he sees his cousins and he personalizes everything. and he comes into that space of ego and says, I will not fight. I'm having a nervous breakdown, give me a drink of Coke or something. And at that time, Krishna says, it is unlike you are a warrior, in the sense we shouldn't be aggressive. You shouldn't attack, but you have to defend. And if you don't defend the truth, if you don't stand up for what is right, what an example will you set to society? So it starts off with action. That action is inevitable. We have to act. But how should we act? And then it builds up and goes into other areas and leads to renunciation, which is an inner act. And it links it. At no point is it just, a lot of people think it's a textbook just about right action, karma. But it's not that. It's very deep. It has a deeper significance, because all action is possible when we are alive. And at all times, the suggestiveness and the blatant verses even show us blatantly that this life, this spark of existence, this consciousness, call it the God principle, call it the truth, that is ever present, and that we are linked to that. And its nature is joy. Its nature is omniscient, omnipresent. And that is the source from where you act. And so everything is that energy. Subjugate your ego. Come from selflessness. Do your dharma, do your duty. Do that which you are called upon to do. Don't run away.
So the final line on that chapter that we quoted, peace immediately follows renunciation. If I can get centered in the understanding that what I do will not alter who and what I really am or anybody else.
Really, it's important to understand the word renunciation, because in the Eastern context, renunciation means I become a monk, I take the robes, I take vows, and I start a new life. And so a lot of people, it's called sannyas in Hindi. But what is true renunciation? What can I renounce? I cannot renounce the beautiful car parked outside. It doesn't belong to me. I can say, all right, after I interview Reverend Phil, I'm going to give you the Lexus parked outside. But I can't. I can't give you what is not mine.
Exactly.
So the point is, what am I really renouncing? Do I have to renounce something externally? Do I have to renounce the way I live? Do I have to renounce my family? What do I have to renounce? What I have to renounce is the sense of limitation. We use the word ego, but again, it's very abstract. When I begin to renounce the sense of limitation, I begin to renounce my attachment to fear, to the negative emotions, my attachment to the outcome. Then I free myself up. When I renounce that, I start to operate from a vasta gambit, from a vasta ambit, and then what flows through me is the best. When man is preoccupied with stress and worry, the best in us never comes out.
Do I ultimately want to get to a place where I renounce the physical self?
What can you renounce in the physical self? Because whatever physical self is just 5 elements. Even when that is given up, the one who is saying, I renounce, that one, the source, is eternal. So there is nothing there that I can renounce. I can renounce what is mine, as I was saying, and the only thing that belongs to me is my thinking, my ego. To give up this limited way of thinking. So really speaking, what can I really renounce? The physical self. I mean, if you could reiterate or expand on that question a bit.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say, and maybe it's coming right back to the ego, that I really think that this body is important. Mm-hmm. You know, that I've got to protect it beyond all, I mean, I need to treat it right. Mm-hmm. But I mean, put it in a situation, I cannot let it dictate my action.
Yes.
That's
true. In that context, in that sense, yes. The physical body is a tool. It's an instrument. I have to keep it clean. I have to bathe it. I must take care of it. But the obsession and knowing that I am only this body, and that's why in the Bhagavad-Gita Krishna says that you are the indivisible, indwelling spirit. This body is just like the clothing.
Yes.
And just as you change your clothes to go for tennis, or to go out for a dinner, or to go to a party, so too, you come and you play in this body, and then when you have ended your drama of life, you take up another body. But even when the body is slain, no one is ever dead. You never die, you're eternal.
And isn't that a conversation that Krishna has with Arjuna?
Yes,
Yes.
That's what he says, that even when the body is slain, so the point is, he says it, from the spiritual standpoint, you are eternal. You have come into this body, or you have taken this body to play your game here, to do your duty, to do what your purpose is. Don't get too attached to it. The body will come and go. From the relative point of view, from the worldly point of view also, you must act as the occasion demands. Do what is in front of you. Do it without personal selfishness. Because in that moment when you act without ego and egocentric desires, you are acting in the present, and also the existing pressure within you starts dissipating. And you can see things clearly. When there is clarity of thought, there is clarity of action. Mm-hmm. And excellent action will, in the long run, give you excellent results.
Which is what you would call mindful action.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like for you to define for the audience who's watching the difference between karma and karmic yoga.
Okay. Karma, the word, simply means action. When I do an action, it's called karma. Karma yoga, yoga means to yoke, to join. Karma yoga is simply action done without selfishness. When I change, I make an inner adjustment and I change the way I act. Action by itself is called karma, and action with love, action which is selfless, is called karma yoga. Because in that selfless action, in that action done with love, born out of an understanding that we are one, born out of an understanding that I don't need to hold on to anything because I'm already secure, and that I am connected to something greater, something divine. And in giving, I don't lose anything. When that kind of feeling comes of expansiveness and oneness with my brothers and sisters, then that action, very action, which is not at all invested with any kind of selfishness, becomes so free-flowing, it becomes joyful, and it can never create any reaction. Karma always gives you a result.
Cause and effect.
Cause and effect. It gives a tangible result, but it gives you an impression. It gives you a reaction which gets stored in your psyche. And then that reaction again impels you to act. It's like a cycle, it's cyclical, goes on.
And this was a conversation between, again, Arjuna and Krishna.
Yes.
It's about karma is not acting in what he was supposed to do, which is fight this battle.
Right.
And karmic yoga was to accept it with the peace and understanding that this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yes. In simple words, very well put. That
I have a good teacher.
that I have a duty, and the duty is, my duty is determined by my inner temperament, that every person is placed here and given a field to act according to the inherent tendencies, good or bad, and according to the role they need to play. And in that, one must not attach any personal agenda, but do what is in front, surrendering and offering that action to a greater noble ideal. And higher the ideal, more beautiful the action, because when I surrender, when I offer, dedicate that action to the divine, to God, let us say, or to my family, to my country, I draw energy and inspiration from that goal. When I draw energy and inspiration from that goal, I can meet the challenge in a more effective way.
So the more that I let go of my ego, the more I open up a pathway that allows the divine to come through.
Yes, but the idea is, in life we are habituated, we are creatures of habit. And that habit is a pressure upon us by past invocation, like whatever I'm used to thinking, obsessive thinking. And even if I understand this intellectually, I end up doing the same thing.
So like when I'm driving down Cerritos Road and somebody cuts me off, my first instinct is to yell at them.
Yes.
Okay, but if I catch that instinct and I just bless them on their way.
If I recognize that when I yell, I am actually expending my energy. So it's a simple principle that Krishna gives Arjuna, who is his student. Arjuna says, teach me, help me. And actually the teacher really never helps until the student calls out for help. And then Krishna gives in a beautiful verse, he gives the whole art of action. And he says, your job is merely to act and not to worry about the results. And a lot of people misunderstood this verse and thought, oh, that means whatever comes, don't worry whether you get $1 or 1 million, just keep on acting like a mule. No, it doesn't mean that. It means that at this moment, the only power you have, the only choice you have is you must act. No one can stay without action, even for a moment. He says that also. And if you act in the now, and if you are worried about the result which is in the future, once you've jumped into the field of activity, stop worrying. The anxiety for the fruit, the reward in the future, is going to dissipate your energy. And to do karma, you need energy. So karma yoga is conserved energy while acting in the world outside.
I want to go back on the topic of yoga. I mean, and I think a lot of people who are watching this show, I mean, yoga is nothing more than you stretch here, you bend here. And can you
Yoga has
that?
So many definitions, about some 82 definitions or more even, the word yoga. But we all now know that the main meaning is to yoke, to join. Yuj, it comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, to join. To have union with the higher self. To have union with who you truly are. Because right now I've taken myself to be this mind. Whatever I think, whatever I feel, whatever I see, that's what it is. But I'm something more than that. I have a certain degree of control over my thoughts, over the body. So the physical yoga is the asana. And yoga actually means the practical approach, the technique. Any philosophy has two things. It has the pure science, and then it has the practical science, the technique, the technology. So in this context, if I were to translate yoga, it would mean the technology, the practical application of what the scripture is saying. And so yoga becomes a technique. And we have 3, sometimes 4 yogas. And the Bhagavad-Gita really deals with all these techniques. These are the paths to come back into your center, from where not only can you act in the world outside, you can gain the peace, but you can also know what your true purpose is and be connected to the divine.
My understanding of the Bhagavad-Gita as I read it was that Krishna was talking about the paths, the yogic paths, each one of them being valid as a way towards enlightenment. My impression was that he was almost teaching, each one by itself. Isn't it possible to have a mixture of all of them
Yes.
and that be a valid path as well?
There is a sequence. And there is a sequence and there is a mixture in the sense that you may argue that there is a 3-legged stool. If I pull one leg, all of it comes to me. So the point is, one has to start from where they are. Because if I want to come to this studio, I will start from the road that my house is on, and you will start from the road your house is on, but ultimately we will meet at a point and we will come down this last bit and together walk. So the idea is, first practice karma yoga. Action being the outermost external activity that shows up. And when you practice action with love, you offload a lot of your stuff. You become more and more peaceful as you start loving people and not expecting a return for your actions. You're more secure and you're more content. Then have the goal in front of you, enlightenment. Enlightenment is peace, joy, happiness, whatever word you give it, or God, God. Then as you start, by doing karma yoga and by having an appreciation and love for God, love for the higher, love for humanity, you start by practicing devotion and love, bhakti yoga. All those things, the flickerings of the mind which drives us crazy, one is the quantity of thoughts, but even the quality of the mind. And all those flickerings of the mind, they become quiet. Your mind becomes pure, it's soaked more and more with love. And then bring in the knowledge. So you actually have to practice it simultaneously, kind of. Sri Aurobindo, who was a great master in India, he coined the phrase integral yoga, which has nothing to do with the physical postures, that you have to integrate naturally. For example, if I say, I love you, okay, that's devotion, I love you, and then I say, I don't want to help you at all. Can't be. So my action, service is nothing but a manifestation of my love for you, so I serve you. So here is karma yoga, action, here is bhakti yoga. And I cannot serve you and love you unless I know you, knowledge. So naturally, the more I know this divine creation, what a beautiful creation, the sun, the moon, the stars. Who has made it? Every day I'm grateful I can breathe. I don't have to start a machine and say I'm breathing. So that's kind of an appreciation intellectually in the beginning of is called knowledge. So definitely they work hand in hand.
And again, it's coming back to renunciation. We're not attaching to the knowledge. Look how smart I am.
Yes.
Or look how devoted I am. Or look at what great service I'm doing. It's about selfless service, selfless action.
It's about the understanding that at every moment I am connected to the divine. And that this entire universe and all its workings is in this realm of time and space, cause and effect, action and reaction. And that the field is ordered by my own inner thoughts and desires. And as I refine them, as I infuse more and more love and understanding for the world and for God, more and more I do that, I come to a place of center. And at that moment, everything becomes crystal clear. I don't see things through projection. I see them for what they are. And that delusion, it's that mental delusion. In fact, I'm using the word delusion because Krishna is told by Arjuna towards the end of the 18th chapter, there are 18 chapters, thanks Krishna, did I ever say I won't fight? Of course I will fight. My delusion is gone. And one very important thing about the Bhagavad-Gita is that Krishna never changed the situation externally. Throughout, he only guided Arjuna. The change happened within Arjuna's being. So the shift happened inside. And the moment the shift happened inside, he saw the external situation which hadn't changed in a very different way.
Like you were saying, all problems are a result of our incorrect perception of the situation.
Exactly.
And the only way to have that incorrect perception is by seeing it through ego.
Yes, seeing it through the filter of I and my. And I want it this way. I can control things. Whereas it's not like that. That's the illusion. And the illusion is this limited thinking that I can control things, because there is a larger perspective, there's a larger scheme unfolding here. There is a divine law operating in everything. And when we understand that, we become peaceful. We become restful. Because we start having faith. Because without faith and trust, and the Gita talks a lot, man is what his or her faith is. Everything we do is colored by our faith, whether it is charity, whether it is practice, whether it is eating, anything.
Can we expand that to say it's either colored by our faith or by our ego?
Again, what is the faith? The faith is of three kinds. The faith is that which is more pure and noble, we call it sattva. Faith is that which has a bit of greed, it is dynamic. Faith, or any kind of thought, the texture of any thought or feeling, can be not so pure. It's selfless, but it has some personal agenda in it. And then our faith can be, or our thoughts can be, completely selfish, completely unmindful.
So it's what the mix is.
It is the mix, and we are all a mix. Every individual is a mix of these three moods of the mind, these textures called gunas in Sanskrit.
So let's take that another step then. So the knowledge, the devotion, and the service, as the more that we implement it, the more that we detach from the actions in those implementations, the more we smooth out that surface and we don't get it.
Well, in the language of religion, we will say there is an inner purity, inner purification. In the spiritual language, you'll say inner purification. But inner purification means more and more I start feeling a sense of peace, a sense of security, because I'm no longer dependent on something outside giving me that joy. I do my best, and that action is done with the best of my ability, and I'm doing it in the present moment. And so that energy is completely available. I'm not focusing out A, and B, I'm doing it out of love. And we know that whenever we bring love into any action, it becomes effortless. Whether it is love for the person or a larger universal love for God.
And these are part of the teachings that Krishna imparts to Arjuna, but it's by guiding him to detachment and right action.
Yes. Right action through detachment, and then giving him the techniques right away. Even in the 6th chapter, 1/3 of the book, he starts giving the techniques, because unless there is perfection, unless there is mastery over myself, I cannot hope to change anything outside. So make your mind more inward. Make your mind, he gives him the technique of meditation. Because when the mind is inward and alert and vigilant, it can then apprehend something greater. It can understand a wider perspective of things. It connects more, and it connects more to the divine after it has gained this inner purity and quietude. So the key is, make this restless mind restful.
And you had used the phrase higher and lower minds. Are we talking about the same physical aspect and just how we use it, or are we talking about two separate?
Mind is, really speaking, if you analyze, can you really say there is anything a mind? No neurosurgeon has found a mind inside. Brain, yes. But mind is what? It's flow of thoughts. And a higher mind is called that where the mind is purified, peaceful, alert, clear, clarity, cheerfulness. And when I use the word mind, I just want to make it clear to your audience, I'm talking of the head and the heart, the feeling and the emotion and the intellect. Together, it is one instrument. In Sanskrit, we call it one, the mind and the heart together. So when the mind is turned down, That space where there is negative emotion, fear, jealousy, greed, lust, anger, we call it, technically, it's the ego, the lower mind. And that same mind, when we withdraw it, when we shift it from that preoccupation and turn it inward, we call it the higher mind, which has mastery over itself. Because physically I may feel like getting angry, at somebody. I'm impatient, I forget this is my elder, this is my boss, at that time the emotion takes over. But if I remember, if I step back, and if I step into the higher mind, even though the emotion rises, I can have mastery. I'm not a victim of my emotion. That is the idea.
Would I be accurate in stating that the first scenario, the negative emotions, come from the brain, so to speak, and the higher emotions come from the heart?
I wouldn't even put it this way, because I feel there is a balance needed of the head and the heart. They are like, as I had said, I think previously even, like two wings of a bird. One cannot be, an integrated personality is where the head and the heart are balanced. We need both. But what has happened is there's too much head and not enough heart.
Yes.
And if you have too much emotion but without rational, balance, that is also needed. So the perfect instrument is where the personality is integrated. It's called yoga yuktaha. That means what I feel and what I think are one. There's no dichotomy there. And so with that instrument, when we act, that action itself becomes a joy. And we're not so concerned then with the outcome, because the very joy is in the action for the sake of action. We are constantly acting to gain something towards an end. And we seldom just be in the moment and act for the very sake of work itself. And the best in us comes out when we are in the moment, when we forget our little ego. So the higher and lower mind is not too distinct, it's two spaces. One functioning from the ego, which is turned outward, external, with the negative emotion. And when that same mind, it's like turned inward, that mind becomes the higher mind. And in fact, there's a phrase in the Bhagavad-Gita that says, you are your best friend when your mind is turned inward. You are alone your enemy when your mind is turned outward.
I have a background that includes a 12-step program. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I used to hear a long time ago in the program, they used to tell you when you came into the program to put it on your mirror, and there was two sentences. The first sentence is you were looking at the problem, and the second sentence was you're also looking at the solution.
Yes.
Yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. It's
wonderful.
Do I want to, how do I want to act, and what am I going to drive those actions? One of the things that you've talked about in the Bhagavad-Gita was the lesson about we're not here to manage stress, we're here to eliminate it. And I think we've been kind of talking about that. So it's about perception. Stress is about incorrect perception. So Arjuna is stressing because he sees this situation and he perceives it incorrectly, so to speak. And once he gets the correct perception, stress goes away.
Absolutely. It's my stress is a pressure. It's my, as I think I have said it previously or in one of the books, stress is my inability to cope with the external situation, with change. Mm-hmm. I want it a certain way. And when there is a change, it deviates from my concept of what I want it to be. And that non-acceptance of what is causes me to constrict in my own thinking and feeling. And that causes a lot of stress.
Which is basically me believing my ego knows better than what's being presented to me, which is being presented by the divine.
Absolutely. By the divine as directed by my own inner tendencies and impulses and my own temperament, which needs this situation to resolve what I have come here to resolve.
And it has to be resolved with my focus only on me, as opposed to seeing that the divine that is within me is within you, and we both have different resolutions.
Right. And that the divine is not giving me this punishment or this situation, but the divine is merely neutral. And according to the imbalance in me, this situation is given. It is an opportunity now for me to balance out, to resolve, to come to a resolution with it. And that is that moment, if I understand that no matter what I feel, and that's where faith and trust comes. And to just take that journey with that faith, with that understanding. That's why it's a beautiful, faith is a wonderful meaning. It is not only blind belief, because my beliefs will break. My teacher used to say, faith is belief reinforced with an understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have not reached our goal. Who knows? You are telling me that this Bhagavad-Gita is saying this, and all the other scriptures are saying that there is another space from which I can operate. But right now, the person who is struggling doesn't see that end of the tunnel. So that faith is needed to walk, that I am going by the words of the scripture, I am going by the words of my mentor, my teacher, because they have walked the path. I'm going mountain climbing, and the coach and they're taking me, and I have to have faith. I can't see how I'm going to make it there. And that's important. That's why this teaching is done in a tradition. It's been time tested.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like only a book is saying it, and then it's dead. It's dead words.
Well, like we said, the book itself, the Bhagavad-Gita, is a boiled down synopsis of the Upanishads, basically.
Yes, it's a living literature. It's a living piece of, it's a handbook of instruction, because there is an answer for everything in that.
Yeah, you said that beautifully in that lecture I was listening to. It's a way of life, not a view of life.
Yes.
Which is a beautiful statement. Last time you were on the show, I made this comment and you kind of laughed at it, but that's okay. I'm going to make it up, but maybe we can dig into it a little bit deeper. The interpretation of the Bhagavad-Gita that I read, one of the lessons that, and we talked about it here a little bit, about there's more than one, each one of us has our own path to walk. Basically, what I understood was that Krishna imparted to Arjuna, it's really better to do a lousy job with your karma than do a good job with somebody else's karma. See, you did that again. Can you talk about that?
Okay. I'm not laughing at you.
I know.
I'm just
I know,
laughing
it's okay.
because I like your choice of words. It's nice, it's simple.
I mean, but isn't that the gist of what he was saying? Because Arjuna wanted to go run away and become a monk or something like that. And he said, no, that's not your path.
No.
Even if you did it well, that's not your path.
Your duty is based upon your inner temperament. If you are a warrior, you're a king. You have that temperament in you. You have those characteristics. And that's why you've been placed in that, You see the people who are doing like heavy work outside, you won't see that they are thin, they are strong. And they need that field to express themselves. So Arjuna, your duty, your field has been given to you based on your inner temperament. If you run away from here now, you'll go to the forest and start, cutting down all the trees. So do your duty. Better it is for one to perform their own duty, meaning to do what has been given to them, because it is not given by an accident or by some whim of a creator sitting there, but it is that which I need according to my inner temperament. So act on it, and by acting with love and selflessness, and by acting with devotion towards the higher and with knowledge, you will satisfy your own, you will actually, lessen the pressure. You will come to a more peaceful place within you.
I'm fulfilling my karmic duty.
Yes.
So we're going to start to run out of time. And my understanding of the Mahabharata is that it is the largest epic ever written. So I'm sure my audience is never going to get a chance to read the whole book. Can you tell us how it ends?
Oh. It ends with the battle is over, and then the victory of the good over the not so good, and that Yudhishthir, the eldest brother, gets the kingdom, and they ruled for a beautiful 32 years after that, when Krishna left his body, So the rule continues, and it is a golden age and a golden period of a beautiful rule.
So we have a happy ending.
Happy ending.
Oh, that's what we like.
What
No attachment here, but wanted a happy ending. And just to, I don't know if we touched upon this, is my understanding accurate that Krishna is in the body of Arjuna's charioteer?
Yeah, he is riding the chariot, and Arjuna is there as the prince, but it has a lot of symbolic meaning, and that he's the pure intellect, and the pure intellect then has the reins of the intellect and the mind, and the horses which denote the sense organs. And Arjuna is the ego, who is sitting in this chariot, and this body is the chariot. That's roughly the analogy given, the metaphor.
Wonderful. I mean, I hope that the people who are listening really got to, we've given a lot of information and a lot of instruction, but I mean, again, I want to reinforce this instruction is all right in that book, and it's real clear. I mean, you had said, that this needs to be studied by a prepared mind. Mm-hmm. So if we can quickly, how does somebody watching the show get their mind prepared?
You get your mind prepared by first wanting to make a shift in your life, and by learning to start conserving your energy. When the mind is focused, when my energy is conserved by doing what is in front of me, by just being present to this moment, we prepare the mind. And when that mind is so focused and so present, then the teaching can take place so easily. You can absorb it.
Excellent. Are you prepared to give out some contact information? I think we've been flashing that on the screen, so probably.
I think you have that.
Okay, so we'll skip through that, because I think and if anybody needs to, they can contact me. I'd be happy to give that out to everybody. I just going to make a couple of announcements, and I'm going to come back to you for a parting thought.
Okay.
A couple of things. I'm inviting the audience to participate in a couple of weeks. We're going to be doing a Thanksgiving show, and you have the opportunity to partake in a number of ways. My email address will be scrolling at the end of the show. You can send me on the email address something that you want me to read over the air to be thankful and grateful for, or you can, if you have the technological capability and the equipment, take a little picture of yourself with your camera and email it to me. We'll convert that and put it up on the show. We'll play it as part of the show. We're gonna, we do this every Thanksgiving. I've done it this is my 10th year, 9 years on radio. But we're gonna, what is Thanksgiving all about? It's about thankfulness and gratitude. It's not about turkeys and football. So we're gonna explore that in letting people partake of it. Or you're welcome to come down to the studio. We record on Mondays at about 2 o'clock, and you can come down to the community college. We're going to record on the 23rd. Also, with announcements, I'm looking for feedback from everybody as to, anything you'd like to see the show covered, anything you disagree with, email me. I'd love to hear from you. Also, I am a counselor. I do spiritual counseling, and I'm here to help, and I'm here to serve. And if you think that I could be of any assistance to you, again, contact me. I do I work on a donation basis, and I work with whatever it is that you bring with you. I'm not here to convert you to any particular religion. I'm not here to tell you what to believe in. I can help guide you to find your own beliefs if you don't have any, but, I believe that without a spiritual component, we do not heal. So if that sounds good, contact me. We can talk about it. And last but not least on announcements, next week's guest is going to be Don Hendrick, who is from the Tupten Norbu Ling Buddhist Center here in town, and we're going to talk about Atisha's 7 points of mindfulness. So again, another tool that you folks can try to implement in your life. Okay, parting thought?
Parting thought is that whenever we dedicate or surrender to a higher ideal, we draw great inspiration and strength from it. And that energy is what we need to meet the task at hand. So when we have an ideal, have a goal. Doesn't matter whether you reach, and greater the goal, greater the inspiration. And when that inspiration is there, that energy is there, with that positive energy, infusing it with love, when you do your work, excellence is sure.
One of the statements you had made was, we all have the same life source and life force in us. So to take that statement, and let me see if I can just expand upon it a little bit, then if I hear you correctly, that once any person achieves something, anyone and all of us are capable of achieving that. So anybody can become the teacher that you are, for instance, because we're all the same in our essence. It's a matter of just connecting to that essence and nurturing it and allowing it to grow. Would that be a fair statement?
That would be a fair statement. We are all one. We have been one. We will always be one. There is that one energy. And each and every one has that potential because it is already with us.
It's already there.
It is not something external to be gained. All of us are equally divine.
And we all have the capability of overcoming our karma.
Absolutely, we have the capability of overcoming it, because even now, in our true essence, we have already overcome it. We are that. It's just covered, and really we just have to discover it, and it's already there.
Exactly. So the purpose of karma is to lead us to the place where we recognize our own divinity.
We recognize our own divinity and rest in our joyful nature.
And again, fruits of action, renunciation of the fruits of action is better than meditation. Peace immediately follows renunciation. Doesn't get much clearer than that, does it?
Thank you.
I thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me here.
You have an open invitation. Anytime you're in town, we'll do another show.
Thank you.
When are you coming back?
Next year.
Next year,
Quite
okay. So I think we're just about pretty much out of time. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I hope this has stimulated you to just take another look at your life and what you're doing with it. And the resources are out there. I mean, this book is not an esoteric book that you can only find in rare places. Almost any bookstore in town, I'm sure you can get the Bhagavad-Gita and read it. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to help you with them. And if I can't help you with them, I will connect them to you.
Absolutely.
So until next week, know that you are divine. Demonstrate it. Change your life. You can do it. Blessings to you all. I'm Reverend Phil, and I've been your host for Words of the Prophets. Thank you for tuning in. Please join me again next week, same time, same channel, for more Words of the Prophets.